My guest at this time is the Ring of Honor Director of Operations, as well as the host of ROH's new web series, Old School Sessions. It's Gary Juster. Gary, thank you very much for taking the time to chat with me today.
Thank you for having me, Nick.
Now, Gary, I'm really excited to chat with you. We've met a few times. You're always very, very nice to me at Ring of Honor and helping me get the access that I need. But I've heard about you forever, man. You've done it all in pro wrestling. For the fans out there that may not know who and what you've done, Gary, because you are a behind-the-scenes guy, can you give us like a 10,000-foot view real quickly of what your path through the business has looked like?
Well, I started out as a fan, loving wrestling. Always had the fantasy of being an event promoter. That was just when I would go to concerts and wrestling shows and other types of events when I was a kid. I knew I really didn't have the performer in me, but I thought, wouldn't it be cool to kind of be behind the scenes helping to put something like that together?
Yeah.
And I've been fortunate enough to be able to do that. I started doing it when I was a kid in high school. I promoted my first event in a high school when I was 16 for a youth group, then as junior class president the next year, and just continued on from there. I did some yearbooks for the AWA when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I just nosed my way into the business. Minneapolis was the center of the AWA. It's where the TV was done, so I could hang out there, and Nick Bockwinkel befriended me, and I got to know a lot of the wrestlers. And I was able to then become a live event promoter, and it's been great. I've had a storybook career, really. Got to live out a fantasy of being a promoter of some big events, and it's been, as Gene Okerlund used to say, quite a ride.
So you came up in the AWA area. So you say Nick Bockwinkel was a friend of yours? I've read that you were kind of brought into the business by Verne Gagne. Was that correct or no?
Verne, may he rest in peace, would like to say that, and he did always say that.
Okay.
But they both kayfabed me, which was fine looking back. That's the way it was. But Nick was the one who befriended me when I had the idea of doing this wrestling yearbook when I was a kid. I was 15 or 16, and I was a big baseball fan. I used to buy the Minnesota Twins yearbook every year, and I thought, gee, why doesn't wrestling have this? This is something cool. So I pitched the idea. Nick liked it. Nick kayfabed and said, you should meet Verne Gagne because he's world champion. He has a lot of influence here. He didn't come out and say Nick owns the territory. Verne owns the territory.
Gotcha.
He didn't say that.
Gotcha.
But I kind of knew that. And that's how I met Verne. Verne had noticed me hanging around, and I apparently made a decent enough impression on Verne, and was with Verne on and off during the first probably 10 or so years of my wrestling career. We had our ups and downs. We had our good moments. We had our falling out. We had our patching it up. But Verne was a big influence. There's no question.
So when did you get smartened up? Do you remember the moment where the veil got dropped for you, Gary?
The big part of the veil getting dropped was probably a couple years later. I did an indie show. I was living in D.C., and I did an indie show that I put together at a high school in suburban D.C., and it was with a group that Bruno Sammartino was kind of lending his name to. Dominic DiNucci worked it. Blackjack Mulligan was kind of working behind the scenes. And it was then, in talking with Blackjack Mulligan about planning things out, that they just didn't kayfabe anymore. Everything was kind of on the table. Stuff that I'd known, that I'd kind of figured out, but no one had really acknowledged. And then when I'd go back to Minneapolis, by that time, Verne would let me into kind of that sacred behind-the-curtain area where they would do their promos after house shows, and guys would have been bleeding, and they were all together, and they were doing this. I remember Verne coming over to me one time and looking me in the eye and saying, we've taken you in on this because we trust you, and if I ever hear of you, breaching this or blah, 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 kind of a threat that, you never go outside of this circle in terms of protecting the business. That's just the way it was until probably the 90s.
And so do you miss that? Do you have nostalgia for that? Do you wish the business was still kind of like that? Or do you think it's better that the business has grown in a way where people can have seemingly like normal lives and also be pro wrestlers at the same time?
Both. I loved it back then because it was just it was unique. It wasn't like other businesses. I didn't know about it. It was it had a certain mystique. But you know what? I don't like the designated hitter either. And apparently they're going to have it in the National League either next year or the year after, which is really going to destroy it for me as an Atlanta Braves fan. So if I like the sport, or if we call wrestling a sport or sports entertainment, then I think one has to accept the evolution, and that's what's happened. And there are things that I love about the game today that I didn't back then, and vice versa. So it's just the game has changed just as others have.
Just to follow up real quickly, then what do you like now that you wish had been kind of the way it is now, but back then when you were kind of coming in? Is there anything come to mind?
Back then, there were characters in a sense that they had to live, as you suggest, they had to live the gimmick.
Yeah.
There was a certain mystique when somebody when a wrestler would walk into a room. Were they, was it really them or was it the gimmick? Where was that line between truth and fiction? The line has changed now, whereas you suggest people can be themselves. We can promote wrestling. We can be places and not have to pretend anymore, so to speak. And we wouldn't have to insult somebody's intelligence who could clearly see what was going on, and we had to give them that wink when we knew that it was just a wink.
Gotcha. So when you were coming in the AWA, I'm not exactly sure how close you guys are in age, but were you and Bischoff coming in at the same time with Verne in the AWA, or were you guys a little bit apart?
We're only a year apart in age, but we were not at AWA at the time. I didn't meet Eric until he came to WCW.
Okay, so that's wild though, because I used to do Eric's podcast, and listening to you talk about your relationship with Verne, it sounds like you knew Verne when he was a little bit younger. Eric, it sounds like he knew Verne when he was a little bit older. Am I right about that or wrong?
I knew Verne all those years. I knew Verne from the time I was a kid. Eric met Verne later when he went to work for him.
Right, yeah.
So Eric knew Verne during a certain time in Verne's life, but I knew Verne for probably 30 years.
I thought so. Okay, yeah. I'm just trying to get my time, because you're a tough guy to research, Gary. Because, again, it's I've heard a lot of things over the years about what all you've done. To see it all laid out, I don't know that your career has, a Wikipedia page at this point, unfortunately. So... with you and Eric though, so when you get to WCW, did you guys bond at all over the connection there? Was there any, moment where you guys kind of saw, or what was that relationship like with Eric then, I guess?
Yeah, I don't know that there was any sense of bonding over having worked with Verne. Jim Hurd brought Eric in as an announcer, and I really didn't get to know Eric very well at that time. I got to know him, obviously much later when he rose in his position to be executive producer and then president of the company. And I worked closely with Eric at one time as director of business affairs, doing contracts.
Yeah.
And worked with him as someone who booked arenas, and with Zane Breslov, who kind of served as an intermediary because Eric and I would have our issues. As I guess has been discussed.
Sure.
But that's how I met Eric, and knew him all during his time at WCW, but not really very well at first.
Okay, and so WCW at that. So how different was it working? What was the corporate environment like at WCW as compared to what you had kind of become accustomed to coming up in the AWA and elsewhere?
Well, I hadn't worked in any kind of corporate environment in AWA. I had worked in AWA as a kid.
Yeah.
I did a yearbook. Then we had kind of a split on the money. I did some spot shows in the suburban area where I lived.
Sure.
And then I didn't work again with the AWA really until when I was promoting in Baltimore and looking for talent. That I had some talent from Verne from what we then called Pro Wrestling USA. And then later combined with Jim Crockett Promotions, where I have 3 matches from Jim Crockett and 3 matches from Verne. And that was when I worked, so to speak, with Verne. And I worked with them when they were doing the tapings for ESPN at the Showboat in Atlantic City. I'm sorry, was it the Showboat or the Tropicana? Showboat was in Vegas. Might have
would
been
know.
Tropicana in Atlantic City. And we were doing ESPN taping, so that was Pro Wrestling USA, and I would work with Verne then. But I never worked in Verne's office. Verne was never part of a corporate environment. Verne had an old school, old style wrestling office. WCW, of course, was part of Turner Broadcasting. We had a corporate office.
Sure. And how much was that an adjustment for you? Like going from being in this kind of, now you're in this space now where you got, big money and big players kind of involved.
It was a gradual thing because I had worked as an independent promoter until there was a WCW. At the end of the Jim Crockett years, I was a partner with them in several towns, and in other towns, I would just be their kind of front man and promoter and media buyer and such, and I would get a payoff for each event from Jim Crockett. So I was independent. When they sold out to Turner, I became an employee of Turner Broadcasting and WCW. But for the first several years, I worked from my home in D.C. I traveled, of course, constantly to promote the towns. Sure. And then in 93, I moved down to Atlanta to work inside the office. But by that time, I'd been to the office several times. I knew everybody. It wasn't a big adjustment.
Okay. And Ted Turner, did you get to ever spend time with Ted Turner or talk with him at all pick his brain about pro wrestling or no?
No. I got to meet Ted Turner at some kind of meeting that we had with him, with everybody, just kind of a pro forma thing. We got our picture taken. Occasionally, I would be in an elevator with Ted. One time I was in an elevator at the Omni Hotel with Ted and Jane on our way to the World Series.
Oh, my God.
And was shocked because I got into the what we called the motor lobby, and Ted Turner and his wife, Jane Fonda, got into a red Ford Taurus, and Ted drove away in this kind of mid-sized family car instead of a chauffeur-driven, Cadillac or something, which I always found rather funny looking back.
Huh. Interesting. So you were there then, WCW, then through the height of the Monday Night Wars, then, correct?
I was at WCW from the first day until the last day.
Man, Gary. So you were there from when it was struggling to draw to making millions of dollars a year. When did it click for you that the company had kind of turned a page and was now going to start becoming a bigger deal? Do you remember or no?
There were so many ups and downs, Nick. Of course, the Nitro years when we had the big ratings and, the famous, 83 weeks or whatever, those were huge years. Those were years where we were selling out Nitro on a weekly basis, and it made my job as a promoter a lot of fun because just seeing these sales on the first day was great. And, setting those up, booking those buildings, scaling the houses, putting the tickets on sale. We used to do a deal that Zane Bresloff, our promoter later on, used to do where we would have a talent, and Randy Savage was it a lot, and he'd appear in the lobby of the building. Okay. Of the ticket office the day things went on sale. Okay. And it was a big deal back then. There was no internet. You got your tickets either by the phone or by showing up at a box office or a ticket office. And those things were huge. So that's when, things were really, really big. They were really big during that time when we were able to go to domes and do big businesses. There were times when the WWF had us locked out of buildings. Now, some of those buildings we were able to crack and get in, but others we did not. So we would run domes. We ran what was called the TWA Dome in St. Louis and did 31,000 people in December for a Nitro. Wow. We did the Georgia Dome in Atlanta when they were building the new arena. We did almost 40,000 people there. We did the Dome in New Orleans. So we had some real big times, and then, we took our lumps as well.
Yeah, for sure. I could pick your mind all day about a lot of different things here, Gary, and I know that's why you've got your series now, Old School Sessions, where people can listen to this different chapters and things. But what did you think when you heard the news that WCW was going to go heads up, live with Nitro on Monday nights against Raw? Did you think that was a good idea? Did you think Eric was crazy? What did you think when you first heard that news?
I think we were all just really excited.
Yeah.
It really put a spotlight on us. Not that we didn't have a spotlight before. We'd been on TBS for years. That 6:05 Saturday night show was an institution on cable television.
Oh, yeah.
Got huge ratings. So But when we went live, when we went live on Monday night, head to head with WWF, that was just a huge deal. So I think excitement was what I felt and what most of us felt. I don't think anybody thought anyone was crazy. We just thought, wow, this is huge.
Who were your favorite people to work with in that period there? Was there anybody that or were there any wrestlers you thought just were great and like a ton of fun to be around during that time period?
When I was an independent promoter and I was young and impressionable, I would at times, go out. Ric Flair was famous for taking kind of new people in the business out and buying them drinks and being the Nate, as he would call himself.
Okay.
But as I got a little bit further in, I did not really, spend a lot of time outside the business with the wrestlers. Mike Hegstrand, Road Warrior Hawk, was a good friend of mine. I was at his first wedding. I was really I had kind of lost touch with him for the most part, a year or two before he died. So was really shocked when he died so young. I had I would say a good relationship with most of the wrestlers. I've had a good time seeing them at some of these kind of confabs that have gone along with big events on WrestleMania weekend and other times. I saw Bob Remus, Sergeant Slaughter, a couple years ago at one, and it was great to see him. And I shook his hand to say goodbye and said, "What do you mean shaking a hand?" And he said, "Give me a hug." And he gave me a big hug. And, those kind of things at this point in my life and career mean a lot. The fact that we built good relationships with the talent and with buildings and such too.
Yeah.
And I take some pride in that.
So what happened? What happened after WCW? Like, what did you go to work at WWE? I have no idea. Like, I have no idea what happened between that and Ring of Honor. I'll be quite frank with you. So, like, what happened there?
I never worked at WWE or WWF.
Okay.
When WCW closed, I did some Lucha Libre shows.
Nice.
In fact, at one time we held the record, I think, for the biggest indie show. It was at the Gwinnett Arena in Duluth, Georgia. We had Elio Del Santo, La Parca, and a bunch of others. We did about 4,000 people. That was our first show, and that was our best show. I also booked some buildings for a circus for a while. I booked some buildings and for Dodge World's Toughest Rodeo for a while, and finally I was able to reconnect with my old friend Jim Cornette, as he used to sometimes call me, my old friend, and we kind of had this idea of doing something with Ring of Honor, and I had known Joe Koff for 25, 30 years. From way back when he was the GM of WNUV Channel 54 in Baltimore, longtime wrestling fan as I was.
Okay.
And we were able to interest Sinclair Broadcasting in Ring of Honor, and here we are, 10 years later.
See, that's something that's interesting. I've often wondered, because I look at Joe very much as a suit. So you're saying that Joe really does, would you say has a wrestling mind, or is just very passionate about wrestling? Like, how would you describe Joe Koff?
Joe grew up in New York going to watch Bruno at the Garden, the way I grew up in Minneapolis going to watch Verne Gagne. And Joe was a lifelong wrestling fan. Joe got into the television business as a young man, and when he worked in Tampa, he helped put together a real kind of a seminal show called the Battle of the Belts, where they brought in champions from various promotions and did a live wrestling show. And that was back with the old Florida office with Duke and Hero and Eddie Graham. And that was how Joe got started in wrestling. So Joe goes way back as a fan and kind of as an early television producer.
Dang. Okay. So you come into ROH here. It sounds like Joe was your link in there. So how has ROH the office been for you? What's it been like working with Joe and the rest of Ring of Honor management here the past many years?
It's great. We have a small staff. We're very that way. We work together very well. Mark Davis, our director of production, Hunter Johnston, our executive producer, Greg Gilliland, our GM, Joe, of course, I've known for all these years.
Sure.
And we have a really good organization. It's a lot of fun.
So now you're at this very interesting time historically. We roll into 2020 here. And, going into 2020, I really thought Ring of Honor was setting up for some big stuff. I remember a lot of big announcements that were made at the top of the year for Ring of Honor. You guys did the big free enterprise show that drew a bunch of fans. I believe it was in Baltimore. I think that went down. What did you think that Ring of Honor's 2020 was going to look like before the coronavirus pandemic hit?
We had, fortunately, from our corporate owners, been given the go-ahead to, and you see now, create a new set to really upgrade our look. We had plans to do a live show, and we had just a big plan for 2020. Yeah. And then everything came to a screeching halt in early March when the pandemic took over.
Yeah, were you guys supposed to go live with weekly TV? That was something I had heard earlier in the year as well.
We were tentatively looking at that to start in July, and of course, like I say, everything got sidelined.
Oh man! So now that you're getting back into it, how has it been for you having to adjust this period and get back to doing television again?
Well, it's obviously very strange. We
Yes.
do no crowd tapings. We put safety first. Our corporate parent and our company. It's always been safety first. In terms of the wrestlers, the staff, the arena people. I think we test probably more than anybody. We create a very firm bubble when we do our tapings.
Yeah.
And it's worked for us. We're under the auspices of the Maryland State Athletic Commission in the state of Maryland, as I'm sure you know.
Right.
And we have worked with them in terms of drawing up protocols to give kind of the maximum protection we can give, considering what we do, and it's been successful for us.
Yeah, and the product that you guys are doing right now, you've decided to come back. You built around this pure title tournament. Jonathan Gresham just captured the championship. Why do you think the decision to build around Gresham this pure title again this time around?
That's first of all, John's a great performer, and he's a terrific technical wrestler. So it plays to my old school prejudices of the Verne Gagne days were the days where the amateur wrestlers were the ones that Verne put on a pedestal. And actually, Verne was active in the amateur wrestling game up until his dementia set in, and he was couldn't be himself. But he was always pushing it on TV. So John is a pure technical wrestler. So I thought that was great. Past that, I don't get involved in talent, in booking. I leave that to Hunter and others. I've always I learned at an early time in my promoter career to stay away from the booking side, and that's I think what I've been pretty successful at doing that.
Yeah, for sure. I wanted to ask then too. You brought up earlier how you used to promote all these shows. You've done cross-promoted shows. Do you know what the status is with ROH and New Japan right now? I've certainly noticed that a bunch of Ring of Honor guys have been popping up on the New Japan Strong shows as of late.
Yeah, I mean, we've always had a good relationship with New Japan. It's changed over the years, as you know, but it's always been cordial. They're going through some changes over there as well with Harold leaving. So I think it's a cordial relationship. I know Hunter certainly built some really good bridges with them from all his work over the years. Yeah,
for sure. And I know that you were, obviously instrumental in the All In pay-per-view that happened, the Ring of Honor at the time pay-per-view. Would you like to see a relationship with AEW as well? Do you think it would benefit both companies to be doing something together, or no?
I don't really have an opinion on it. I've honestly never given it any thought.
Yeah.
They do what they do. We do what we do. I wish them well. As I do WWE and really everyone in our business.
Sure.
I want our business to do well. I have a lot of friends both places. Just kind of cheering for everyone. Usually I found in wrestling, and it was true even at WCW, when our best times were when WWF and us were both doing super business, when we'd both go to a city and sell out the same night. That meant the business was really hot. Those are the best days.
All right, and well, with that, Gary, let's talk about old school sessions here. It's you and Kevin Eck, former WWE creative, now working with Ring of Honor. What are you hoping that fans can get out of these old school sessions that you've been doing as of late here, Gary?
You know, as I've gotten older and I've met people through the years who are wrestling fans, and whether it be over a drink or at a party or even sometimes at a wrestling show, and they're constantly saying, hey, I watched, when I was growing up in Dallas, I was a fan of the Von Erichs, or I grew up in Chicago, and whatever happened to this guy, and what happened to that guy, and hey, what was it like what was this guy really like, and just things like that. So to have a conversation with someone like Kevin Eck, who's a huge fan, he was at my first Baltimore show in '84, and to just kind of have that conversation and let people listen in to talk about what it was like in what I call the end of the kayfabe era. I got involved in the late 60s, early 70s, and the kayfabe era lasted until probably the early to mid-90s. And I think there are a lot of interesting tales and interesting old school stories from that era. And to the extent that I can tell some of them and entertain a few people, we'll try to continue to do that.
That's awesome, Gary. And so where can fans go find the old school sessions as they get released right now?
They can go to ROHwrestling.com. They're right on the front page. They get released every Wednesday at 4:00 Eastern time, and they're on YouTube, but you can link to it from our site.